You know, when I started this, I had an idea of what I thought it was, but at this point, I've just decided that I'm just going to rebrand it into Working Through Religious Trauma, and good on you guys. Hey everybody, welcome back to A Well-Read Nerd. I'm Amber, and today we're going to be talking about Wingfic. If you don't know what Wingfic is, we're going to get into that a little bit, but just know it's a common, I guess you could call it, subgenre in fan fiction. So that's your jumping off point. Now, when I was going through my deep dive rabbit hole for this, you're welcome, there is more nuance to this than I thought there was. When I first made this TikTok, you can go over and follow me on TikTok if you want. It's where you sometimes get my random thoughts. And sometimes reviews for things faster than I get them out on here. But from that jumping off point that I had where that person that was asking about Wingfic, I just went with what I already knew. I didn't really dive too deep into it because there's literally decades worth of building on this trope or subgenre. Take your pick. We're going to talk about the nuance between genre or subgenre and trope in a minute. But there were things that I didn't know, things that I just had not come across because I wasn't in those fandoms. It's something super old and actually predates the internet. And I mean, not like how I predate the internet, I mean it's got some time on me. So, first of all, we're just going to go through and we're going to blanket term Wingfic. What is a Wingfic? A wingfic is basically a fan fiction that involves wings. The characters have wings. This comes in a variety of ways. Okay, you've got ones where people always had wings. It's just an AU, and a lot of times they AU wingfic on it in that case. Everybody's got wings, no explanation is needed, it's just there. Parentheses, sometimes this has to do with horn and tail fic too, but we'll get back to that in a minute. Anyway, that's the first kind. Second kind is basically where something happens and the person develops wings. There's a mutation, there is an accident, something like that. A third kind, which kind of plays into that and kind of plays into the first one in a weird sort of way, and I've only seen a handful of these, but you have your soulmate fic AU, that's a wing fic. They do exist. They are out there. If you guys want to leave me your recommendations for your favorites, I will read them. I have a weekend coming up. Now, the last one of this is the both most and least important one. It's the fourth one, and that is the character canonically has wings. Why I say that is most important and least important is because a lot of times shows that canonically their characters have wings, if the wings are actively seen in the fic, people will still tag it as wingfic. In my opinion, they're not necessarily the same thing, even if the wings do appear. Like, wingfic, in my opinion, is a certain kind of something. And just because your character canonically has wings and appears with those wings in the fic, I don't think automatically denotes that it is a wing fic. But that's up to personal discretion, and if you disagree with me, feel free to let me know. Now, when I first talked about all that over on TikTok and I showed off this picture, okay? This was what I thought was the very first instance of a character in fandom being portrayed by wings. I was wrong. This artist has a picture that predates that. This one came out in 1986. Technically, this is as early as I can find. It's by the same person, Marilyn Cole. Marilyn Cole was actually a big name, fan creator back in the Star Trek Trekkie universe of the fanzines decades ago. She actually went on to write licensed novelizations, when in the extended universe. Yes, Star Trek has an extended universe just like Star Wars. We never get extended universes of things I really want to read. Well, Star Wars was okay. Never really got into the Star Trek extended universe. Anyway, she wrote some of those. So she was a fan who then got paid to work with the company that was producing it. She got to make licensed Star Trek content. I'm clarifying. But as far as I can see, she is the first person to put that into fan art. There might be something that predates that, but as a little history lesson here, A long time ago, if you wanted to imbibe fan fiction, you couldn't do it from the comfort and security of your home. You had to go out in public and talk to strangers. I know, my worst fear too. But you had to go to conventions, you had to go to bookstores, comic book stores. You had to basically find people in the wild to either share back and forth with your fan fiction and fan art, or you had to find fan-made magazines. These were magazines that were literally like printed. I don't know how much they cost by the time I was old enough to be in that, like the zines had died, but you would have like stories, you would have fan art, you would have articles about the characters, all of that in a little magazine that you could take and share around and stuff and read your fan fiction. This trope actually got its start back then. Marilyn Cole got her start writing and doing artwork for Ponfar Times, I think it was called, or Ponfar Press. I'll put it in here which one it is. If you know anything about Star Trek, that gives you an idea what their content was like. Anyway, if you don't, go have a fun time, Google brain bleach later. But yeah, she got her start in those zines, and the reason why we have evidence that she was the first person to do this that we can like point to and have examples of is because it got printed in a zine. Because a lot of this was passed around like in the world's most nerdiest black market back in the day, a lot of this stuff has been lost to time. We don't have records of it. There weren't mass printings of it, if you can consider some of these zines mass printing. I think they did because they printed more than 5. But there isn't a lot of evidence, okay? Not a lot of like concrete, I can pull it up, here it is, look at it, evidence for Wingfic. There are anecdotal stories that Wingfic actually originated in the late 1970s in something called the Professionals. The Professionals, like fandom. It was a TV show in Great Britain. I've never heard of it. Couldn't find a lot about it online here in the States. But apparently it was a thing, and anecdotally people say that Wingfic actually began in that, like, fandom. If that's the case, good for them. If there's anybody old enough in the UK that finds this, that remembers this, like, DM me. I want to know more. This sounds so fascinating. I just imagine a bunch of people in the, like, underground scene of London in the 1970s just passing around stories about guys in turtlenecks that have wings and there's a classic car, and that's really all I know about the show. So yeah, I would love to hear some of those stories. I have a feeling they're very interesting. In any case, that was where Wingfic like got its start. From there, it's like everything does, and I'm still going to do a video about the fandom pipeline at some point. I'm still working on it. It looks like a serial killer like thing in my Google Docs, but I have one. But yeah, it goes over into anime. Now, I mentioned in my TikTok, and I think one person like briefly mentioned and then like deleted their comment because I couldn't find it when I was going back, about how, like, you know, wings aren't in all anime. And like I pointed out in the TikTok, it's, yeah, but I'm talking about the, like, in late 1990s. Like, if you were alive in 1990s, name off 5 anime in the comic books, or in 5 anime or manga. Manga's fine too. In the comments, because I bet you're gonna say Dragon Ball Z, Sailor Moon, Gundam, one of them. Gundam Wing was the most popular. I remember Hellsing, and I remember Cowboy Bebop. That's it. Now, as you get into the early 2000s, there became more that were readily available. However, that came later. That came with the internet age, and I think that's the age that a lot of people are thinking about. But there were fandom sites back in like 98, 99 that I knew about because we were starting to get internet out in the middle of nowhere where I live. And those things for those fandoms were already up and running. So I know for sure by the early like 2000s, when I was like hitting my teen years, starting to get my right on, that Sailor Moon and Gundam Wing had large Wingfic followings in them, because I was part of those large Wingfic followings back in the day. The other ones I can't really attest to. I was never really much of a DBZ fan. Got really into Vegeta and Bulma when I was like 15, but that's between me and my therapist. But like the other ones, I really wasn't involved heavily in the fandom. Even when like Ghibli became popular, and I remember watching like Outlaw Star and stuff like that. I never really like latched onto the fandoms the same way I latched onto those two fandoms, and that's just the way it goes. Now, here's where we come across something where both things can be true at the same time. Because, like I said, anime was going that way. But at the same time, we have a weird offshoot in the early 2000s, where we need to talk about it. And that weird spot is PopSplash. Now, I'm going to go into PopSplash much more in detail, probably about July, because I'm still getting everything together. But PopSplash was basically the first repository of RPF fan fiction. Now, RPF existed beforehand. That's part of what the video is about. But it was the first, like, cohesive, like, thing. And it was all about boy bands. Thing like K-pop people today, only it was back then, and they didn't dance nearly as well, and some of the songs weren't even that catchy. But yeah, people were obsessed with boy bands back then. I get it. I went through a Spice Girls phase. That lets you know what kind of adult I am. But yeah, that PopSplash, like, sphere, because it didn't all exist on... PopSplash was a website as far as I know, but it didn't just exist there. I'd seen it in other places. There was a lot of Wingfics centered around the members of the boy bands. This was not my scene at the time. I'm trying to even... I think I was getting into Linkin Park around this time. So there's that. Yeah, not really. It's a little bit before MCR. I was graduating from high school when MCR really came about, but you know what? That was kind of my jam then too. But you get what I mean. Not really, like, I listened to the songs because they were catchy and on the radio, but like that really wasn't my obsession at the time. But it did migrate over into there and sort of vacillate into its own thing. There's not a lot I could find on it. If you are somebody who back in the day was in that PopSplash, like RPF, like idol thing back in the early 2000s, again, comment. I want to know. And the reason why I'm saying comment is because this is an oral history. Fan fiction is an oral tradition. The only way we keep the history of what fandom is alive is by talking to each other. So if you comment because you know something, or you have a source that you can contradict me, and then you put that down below, that helps keep the conversation and keep the thread of everything that's happened in fandom alive so that other people know what came before. And I think that's important because it is sort of its own subculture, and I think that if you're going to get involved with it, there are certain things that you should know about it. And if us having conversations, even if it's to correct something because you know something else, or to put out that you heard it this way or whatever, I think that does go a long way to making sure that everybody who's going to be a part of the subculture has similar understandings about where everything came from. That's part of the reason why I'm making these videos. Anyway, after PopSplash, we've gotten through that weird phase, and then we're going to glide steadily into the HP verse. There was a time when HP was the biggest, I mean biggest, fandom there was. I wrote in it back in the day. I do not touch that fandom with a 10-foot pole unless I'm really looking for like a nostalgia fic that I thought I saved to my like relators in like AO3 years ago, and I can't find it anywhere. But I have my issues with that fandom. It is not healthy for me to engage in that fandom, so I have taken myself out of the equation, and they can just go do whatever they want to their little heart's desire. But it is important to mention that through this, and specifically we get the Vila AUs, if you remember those. I think they're still a thing. If they are, let me know. You can link fics for that. It's just, like I said, I try not to engage with certain things in my life, and that was leading to a bad place, so I don't engage anymore. But Vila fanfiction became a big thing, especially tied into like, you know, that very like slash fandoms and stuff like that. But that did sort of evolve the Wingfic. That's the first indicators of like things dogpiling on top of each other. So you get the soulmate thing a lot of times added in here, which then got taken and worked in other areas. But I remember seeing that back when I was in high school already. Like, people love them some soulmate fics, and you know what? You go do you. You live your best life. Make sure you exclude angst. I'm looking out for you. You know you don't need that tonight. But yeah, so it kept it alive and sort of marinating. And that marinating of ideas was important, because at the same time there were a few other offshoots that were happening. There's a fandom that I was heavily involved in, which was Good Omens, Crawley, and Arazriel. So I'm not sure if I'm saying that right out loud, but I've heard like 6 hours of Michael Sheen and David Tennant saying it, still not sure. But yeah, I was over in like sort of that sphere as like the branches started coming off the tree, so to speak. And that's an example of a wingfic where the characters have wings as part of the plot. Now, I also liked the Good Omens one because that was my first like foray into like a predominantly, at the time, the forums I was on, gender queer area of the fandom, and that was very nice because I got to see other people's opinions of things, and I think a lot of times people like to get in their own little bubbles, and they don't realize that a lot of times in fandoms people are sharing their own experiences, and it's a great way to learn about other people and other cultures. But yeah, so I was over here while HP was slowly nosediving into oblivion. It's still around, but like, if you know, you know. But what's important, as people started to kind of age out of the HP fandom, we had the biggest thing to contribute to Wingfic ever, which was Supernatural. Supernatural became the thing which codified Wingfic. Thank you, Destiel. You deserve better. But with this became an offshoot. And that's what we're going to talk about here. So I talked about basically it as a subgenre. At the point where Supernatural enters, okay, we are veering off from a subculture or subgenre. Subgenre is better. And we are veering into trope. And what do I mean by trope? A trope, instead of being an overall thing, is a set criteria of specific things that are put into the work, not just an overarching theme. Wingfics are kind of an overarching thing. Character has wings. There's nothing really specific about that. The tropiness comes in Supernatural when you get to wing kink. I'm not going to go into all of it here, because it's weird and I don't feel like it. But I'll get into most of it. But basically in wing kink, you have characters who have wings. This is almost exclusively, and I mean exclusively, in Wingfic AUs, where the characters are just naturally have wings. Like, everybody has wings. It's a thing, it's a culture, it's a society. And with these wings, you get certain things like oil glands to like groom the wings. You get like mating rituals. You get a little bit of breeding kink if you're into that. You get nesting. You get egg preg. No, it's not M-preg, that's egg preg. EGGPREG. It's what you think it is. It's what you think it is. But all of that sort of takes it from being a subgenre to being a sort of trope. And people will argue and say that even then it's still a subgenre. It's like a subgenre of a subgenre at that point. But I view it as falling more into that tropey territory. It just becomes something that people use like shorthand. Because that's what tropes are. Tropes are shorthand. There's nothing wrong with that. But they're just sort of shorthand, so everybody already understands what kind of universe it's in. And that's the reason why I think it's more of a trope than a subgenre. And again, feel free to disagree. Alright, and that's sort of where Wingfic ends here. It is still an active thing in the communities. It is spreading to other fandoms. A few months ago. It was back around Christmas. I was feeling nostalgic and I decided to hop over into the BTVS fandom for like some nostalgia reads, like something, you know, comforting and familiar for the holidays. And I had seen Wingfic there. Very specifically, the only place I really saw it was in Buffy Faith. But yeah, I wasn't mad at it. It was actually pretty good. But it started to disseminate into fandoms like that. I never remember as an active participant in the BTVS fandom back in, like, I don't know, it was after I went off the air. Like 2004, 2005. I don't remember Wingfic being a thing involved back then, even though that was happening and all of the PopSplash anime stuff was happening. There wasn't as much intersectionality and pan fandomness like there is today. By the way, I know in my last video I said I coined pan fandom. I didn't. It was on fanlore. I probably read it and that's why I thought I made it up. But yeah, like it's started to retroactively disseminate down into other fandoms. I am not up to date on what the hottest fandom is right now. I'm still on AO3. I know I say that because I'm still gonna make that Wattpad video. I'm saving that for my birthday next month, so that I have an outlet for everything. But I think you see it more on Wattpad than you do on AO3 with like what the big new trending things are, just because AO3 is just an archive. It doesn't suggest to me what I should read. Wattpad suggests to you what you should read, and so it's going to, with its algorithm, it's going to push the things that are most popular, that it thinks you're more likely to read and spend time reading. So that's just a thing there. So like I have no idea what the big new thing is in fandom as far as TV shows or movies or books. Shadow and Bone, I've seen a lot of crossover with that with other things, so I'm guessing that's big. I mean, the TV show came out, so sure. But yeah, that's sort of how we got here. That is a very brief, and keep in mind, look at the time of how long I've been talking and realize that this is a brief overview of Wingfics in fandom since the beginning. If I had infinite money and all the time in the world, I could probably make a docu-series just about this one genre. I don't, so you guys are getting this. But yeah, that's it. This is Wingfic in a nutshell. It's weird, it's a little kooky, nobody really knows where it came from. But if you're into it, cool. Like, it's what I would argue is one of the least, even the trope part of it is one of the least problematic ones that I've seen have a wide audience across many fandoms. And that is a breath of fresh air for me. So yeah, if you like Wingfic, comment down below, let me know. Like I said, I will take recs. If it's not in my like usual wheelhouse, I'll still give it a look. I just like reading. And also you can share with each other. Like, use my comments section to share fanfic back and forth if you want, about the things that you like. Like a little mini message board. That's not for the engagement, it's just like sometimes I honestly like to see what people put down there, so like, you're just making my day. With all that being said, that's it for today. If you liked, go ahead and hit the thumbs up button. If this is your first time finding me, feel free to subscribe. I can't speak, and my upload schedule is weird, but you do get stuff like this pretty much on the regular. So, there's that. And if you guys have any ideas, anything that you want to talk about in the way of fandom, put it down below. I've got some stuff I'm still working on. I've been working on a Spuffy video for a year and I still can't get it how I want it. But that is coming. So yeah, if it's a trope, a subgenre, a pairing, even if I've never heard of the pairing, I will Google them. Just because it gives me something to do on my breaks from work. But yeah, like any of that, if there's anything you want to know about or you have a question about, just ask. If I don't know and I don't make a video about it, I sure as hell know somebody else in the comments will know what you're talking about and be able to take you where you want to go. Alright, that's the end. I'll see you guys next week. Bye.